Welcome to episode number 4 of the State of the Phightins podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Harper, alongside Ian Copey. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great tonight. Great night for baseball.
Yeah, really is. And the Phillies come what a homestand, honestly. They lost 2 games, but it was probably one of the better homestands of the year. In between taking 2 out of 3 from the Detroit Tigers and fighting against Tariq Skubal, and then taking 2 out of 3 from Baltimore Orioles. What do you think on this past homestand?
This past homestand, I think, has just been classic Citizens Bank Park Phillies this past few from this whole year. You had the Schwarber MVP campaign take a massive step forward. Besides him being hitless the past 2 games, obviously you got again that pitchers matchup. Didn't expect that to be a 12-run game this past Saturday. Wheeler versus Skubal. Then you had that massive comeback against on Friday night. Incredible. Then Cristopher Sanchez. My goodness, this guy locked in as can be. Fortunately, I don't think this Cy Young campaign probably all just a myth. But man, this is the best number 2 in baseball and one of the best, maybe one of the best number 2s in a rotation in this past generation. You could say.
Yeah, I don't even know if you could say Sanchez is number 2. I feel like it's more of a 1A, 1B situation in between him and Zack Wheeler. That's how good Christopher Sanchez has been. He's statistically wise, he's been one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball this season. I would say the only 2 pitchers you could say from the left-handed side that are better than Christopher Sanchez are Tariq Skubal and Garrett Crochet. So, in my opinion, you could say Matthew Boyd in the National League, but I think Christopher Sanchez is the best left-hander in the National League. And I think if it's a game 1, I wouldn't be afraid to start Christopher Sanchez right now.
Potentially, I think when it comes to a game 1 in the playoffs, I think a game 1 and game 2 are too similar in themselves. So whoever you start first, you start. But obviously, yeah, it was incredible. I thought he was only 84 pitches. I thought he should have went out there for that ninth inning, complete the Maddox when you throw a complete game in under 100 pitches.
Got to give ESPN what they want, though, because
Yeah, of
they
course
love
they
that
wanted that.
Duran entrance.
I cannot complain about the Duran entrance, because we'll get to see that plenty more times over the next few years. But man, a Maddox from Christopher Sanchez, that could have been really special. Something he already did earlier this year, even though that was not a Maddox. It was in over 100 pitches. Still incredible,
It
obviously.
would have been
And
his 4th career complete game already. Remember, he had 2 complete games last year. This would have been his 2nd of the year this year.
yes, and is he scheduled to pitch in this upcoming series in
Yes,
Arlington,
he is.
Texas?
He's pitching actually, which when everyone hears this, it'll be tonight against Merrill Kelly, down in Texas. And obviously, the Phillies have a long, deep history with Merrill Kelly going back to the 2023 National League Championship Series. But a thing about this Texas series, Zack Wheeler was scheduled to pitch on tonight against Kelly. His start has been pushed back 2 days because he has shoulder stiffness. Wheeler last start was against Detroit on Saturday. He gave up 3 runs over 6 innings with 10 strikeouts, but allowed 9 hits. His last start before that was in New York, where he gave up 4 runs in 1 inning and struck out 8. Then he pitched against Boston, gave up 2 runs and struck out 10. He has not gotten a win in any of those outings. The last time Zack Wheeler recorded a win on the mound was the 6th of July when he did a complete game against the Cincinnati Reds.
So yeah, obviously with Wheeler's struggles lately, I've seen since the All-Star break, he's come out. I think it's mainly his command of his fastball. I think when teams try to approach him, they're like, "Hey, watch his fastball. Try to find where if he could potentially leave it over the plate, because he'll get away. He'll try to get away with mistakes like that. So as soon
Mm-hmm.
as he misplaces a fastball, that's how teams pound on it. It won't happen as much to a guy like a Sanchez or a let's say Luzardo. So that's why I think, again, once he can get his fastball back on point, back in command, you can get back on this train of uh, him finally winning a Cy Young potentially. Which, I mean, you see Skeen, he's already his ERA is approaching 500. But anyway, whatever. It's an individual award. I still want my elite number 1 starter back, and I like the idea of pushing back his start a bit, make him rest. I saw the idea. Somebody tweeted out of maybe even delaying him or shutting him down for a week or two, and potentially just give using that off day you have there as just another bump for a start. I'm not sure if that's necessary. I think if Rob Thompson thought that was necessary, they would have done that. But obviously, I like that they delayed his start a bit, so he's going to get almost what is this, a full eight
You
days
get over a
rest.
week, yeah, about a week, yeah.
8 days rest. So we've seen him in Wheeler in the past before not do well off of 8 days rest, but I assume that means he's going to be coming in. He's going to be doing some bullpens in the next few days, making sure he's getting his stuff back. So I don't think he's going to be that like just dried out. But no, I'll be
And it
right there
also
rooting for
and,
him,
and the
ready on
Phillies
the
are
10th.
going to be going into realistically what's going to look like a 6-man rotation coming up soon. It feels really hard to take Taijuan Walker out of the rotation because how good he's been pitching recently. Then you bring back a guy like Aaron Nola, you're not putting him in the bullpen. You're not putting Jesus Luzardo in the bullpen yet. You're not putting Ranger Suarez in the bullpen yet. And then obviously the two untouchables with Sanchez and Wheeler. So these guys are going to be getting more days off in between their starts, which could benefit Wheeler if he's dealing with arm fatigue or shoulder stiffness because he has been throwing a lot of pitches recently.
Yes, for sure. I do think when you get to the 6 man, I feel like Rob Thompson. He's been there, done that, realized that failed, mainly back in the Michael Lorenzen days. So I think, and one of the things I respect most about Taiwan Walker, he will do whatever he is told. If they say, "All right, Ty, can you please go back to the bullpen now?" This was something I've had respect for him, even during last year. How this man kept his head down, kept getting to work, and did what he was told. Again, that's like his fifth transition this year from starting to bullpen to starting and now and then probably back to bullpen. I think that they will be forced to put him back there, and
Yeah, I
who
think
knows? Maybe
they'll
when
do
the
it at
playoff
some point.
roster
Yeah,
comes around, and I think when the playoff roster comes around, he is the last, pretty much the last guy out of the bullpen roster wise. Like he is almost the last guy to go to because I don't think then maybe Max Lazar makes it on, but if anything, they'll have him in there. So yeah, I would say he's probably a bullpen guy for now.
because the
After Nola
Phillies they're
returns.
gonna they have to make another roster move for David Robertson, at least for the postseason, and then in a couple weeks they're gonna have to make a roster move for Jose Alvarado. So it'll be interesting to see who falls out of the picture. Remember, Daniel Robert is on the IL right now. I don't think he's gonna when he comes back. I don't think he's gonna be coming back to the major league team. I think he probably goes down to the minors. Uh, but besides him, it's who do you send down? Lazar's been very, very good out of the bullpen. There's guys who I would say are probably untouchable. That's Tanner Banks, that's Matt Strom, that's Orion Keggering, and that's obviously Duron. But outside of that, I feel like that is a touchable situation depending on who gets sent down where, because someone's gonna have to get sent down. It's gonna be a weird and interesting decision though to see who is gonna get sent down.
For sure, and I think the first guy you might see is Alan Raniel. He's been obviously his numbers he's put up has been great lately. I don't think his stuff is that sharp, and thinks he gets away with a few stuff. Same with Max Lazar. But I think it is going to be Alan Raniel as the first guy out, and then if you look at the rest of and maybe though Joe Ross, he's not nowhere near an untouchable. He might be getting a DFA slip very soon too. I don't think he's going to last much longer on this major league roster. I like that they kept him here as some sort, just to use him as an arm to burn whenever they can. But obviously, yeah, he's likely going to. I think he is one of the guys to be out of here soon.
Well, who do you think is gone first, Joe Ross or Jordan Romano?
Joe Ross for sure. You look at the numbers and the consistency and the way they use Liz, Joe Ross. I've been a guy who's sort of been more forgiving to Romano this year. I've seen his struggles, but but I think he's found his way to be consistent enough. Where this guy, Jordan Romano has only been scored on 3 times since the since June 9th, in 3 different outings. So the guy's been there. He's been able to put up consistent uh, scoreless outings for us when called upon. It's just I think he finds his way. They keep him over Joe Ross, who really just only had about really one good stretch of pitching this year. And obviously, and they used Ross as more of a cleanup guy, mop up the situation. You've never seen him in a high leverage situation, which they're more comfortable using Romano, mainly because Romano has been in these situations in his career. You gotta remember, this guy is 100, like over 115 career saves. and he was one of the more touted bullpen prospects to sign in free agency this past year. So I think beyond that, that's why they'll trust Romano a little more, just because he's the real experienced reliever. Joe Ross was a starting rotation convert from last year that did pretty well with Milwaukee. I like the idea of signing him. It just hasn't worked out here, and yeah, he'll probably be getting, as I said, the pink slip soon enough.
Yeah, he'll probably be. I would have to think he's the guy for whoever comes first, but I'm guessing it's going to be Alvarado who comes because he's going to be the second one in between him and David Robertson. So that's who I expect Joe Ross to probably get DFA'd for at this moment in time, because he hasn't been as effective as the Phillies could have hoped. But again, Milwaukee kind of used him in a split area. They used him as a reliever, and they also used him as a starter. And the Phillies had a long man out of the pen, and the Phillies have not really had need for that, considering they have more than enough starting pitchers on their roster right now. And when it comes to bullpen guys, they have more than enough guys in the bullpen as well. So a guy like Joe Ross kind of got squeezed out before the season even started. So I think he's going to be gone sooner than later as well.
And in those situations where the Phillies want to use these stretch relievers, I think that's where they go to a guy like Alan Manuel and Max Lazar. Come in here, give me 9 outs, or however many he can before it's blown up. And usually in those stretch reliever situations, it's in games that are thrown away, mainly,
Mm-hmm.
unless just throwing away games. Even those opener games, let's say, when they're forced to happen. That's what Rob Thompson reverts to. And even when the playoffs come around, I think that might end up being Jesus Luzardo's role when
Yeah.
because I don't think he's going to get any starting time. Even Taijuan Walker, as we just said, he might get moved back to the bullpen. He might be straight back into that role as a reliever. So for a position that the Phillies would rarely use, I think they'll have the right guys to use it for what hasn't been as important this year.
Well, I definitely feel like Lazar has been a leverage guy. Honestly, he's been a pretty good reliever out of the Phillies bullpen. He had one really, 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 really bad outing in Chicago where he gave up 6 runs on 7 hits, only got one out. But besides that one outing, he's had a very, very good year as out of the bullpen, as a guy the Phillies have been able to rely on. He's been up here since May 19th, and he has been very, very good for the Phillies out of the pen. I feel like he is like probably the fifth or sixth best reliever in the pen. And that's saying something for a guy who no one really expected to be a contributing factor to the Phillies on this season.
For sure, and as I said earlier, I do think he sometimes gets away with some lazy pitches that it's like almost like he's in AAA. But he's a guy that comes up here, gets his job done. I'm not sure like if we'll be able to handle it when even the more bigger and bigger games roll around. Yeah, so yeah, that start in Southside was beyond just bolsterous, but I think overall, just because the experience wise, he won't be on here. I think he's the last guy out when Rob is sorting out his playoff roster.
Definitely.
Anyways, let's move on to a little guy who had himself quite some fun this past homestand too, with a grand slam that I believe you saw in person.
Kyle Schwarber. And we talked about it a little in the last episode about his MVP case, and I think now the rest of baseball kind of sees where it looks like Phillies fans have been looking for a while now, that Kyle Schwarber has a legitimate case to be the National League MVP in 2025. What he's done at the plate, he's the reason why the Phillies are in a playoff spot right now. He has been by far a top 5 hitter in baseball this season. The average might not show it, but he leads baseball in RBIs. He's second in home runs. He's third at OPS. He has been a very, very, very productive hitter. He's going to get paid generously this offseason, but Kyle Schwarber should be National League MVP when it's all said and done in 2025.
I have to agree. I think that this case is becoming legit, and I think you have a guy like Shohei Ohtani, then Major League Baseball might just give it to him. Hey, he sells more jerseys, but obviously The numbers are there. The OPS is up there, and the average too. I mean, to have a 256 average and that good of power is honestly insane. You can do not take that for granted whatsoever. Generating a bunch of walks too. Even gets the extra base hits. Sometimes I wish that um, Bryce Harper batted behind or in front of this guy, but I mean, it is a I tell you what, Kyle Schwarber, do not take this man for granted. I think when contract talks come up this offseason, I may have addressed this last episode where John Middleton said the Phillies do not need any motivation with re-signing Kyle Schwarber, which I'm very glad to hear. So I think the Phillies will give them their best offer this offseason. And boy, that'll be a headline I'll be salivating for after the season is over, because I think it will happen very soon. If they're planning on re-signing him, I say no later than Thanksgiving is his contract set for the next however many years.
Yeah, honestly. And the most impressive thing about Schwarber, I would have to say, is also his average. Yeah, this guy is someone who was hitting under 200 a couple seasons ago in 2023. Now he's, hitting 260, almost hitting 260 on the seat. That's really impressive for a guy who doesn't really hit singles. His major league career, he has more extra base hits than he has singles. So for a guy who doesn't get base hits like that, he has had an incredible season. And obviously, MLB and the writers will look at Ohtani. What he has done is impressive considering he has pitched. He's recovered from Tommy John, and he is still hit at a high rate. But his pitching isn't as impressive when you consider he only pitched 19 innings this year, and his ERA is not incredibly low. It is, I would say, average right now. So I feel like that also has to be considered. And the most valuable player is always an interesting award to me, considering like what do you define most valuable as? Is it more of a more most valuable to the league or most valuable to the team? And at the end of the day, I would have to say Kyle Schwarber has been more valuable to the Phillies than Shohei Ohtani has been to the Dodgers.
I can definitely agree with that case there, for sure. I mean, you look at Otani's numbers; they're obviously. I mean, offensively, they're right there, almost neck and neck with Schwarber with RBIs and home runs. Obviously, now Otani, he's the leadoff hitter, so it's obviously not going to get the RBI numbers like Schwarber does. And obviously, the average is up there, but these are two guys that also they play every day. They're never out, and that's what you got to do to be an MVP. So I think, yeah, overall, I think this is a race that comes down neck and neck. Who knows? Otani could have himself a little dip off in production. Schwarber bombs away. Could be a runaway after that, but I think this could likely be neck and neck. It's a regular season decided award, so I don't think what they do in the playoffs will really matter. Once you get to, I think this might take you all the way to the end of September. We won't have a real decided. Oh, that's your runaway MVP.
Well, I think it's also interesting. Would winning the division, if the winning the division, would that come into consideration when it comes to the writers voting on MVP? Because at this point in time, the Phillies have a larger lead in the National League East than the Dodgers do in the NL West. The Phillies trail the Dodgers right now by half a game. There's a chance that the Dodgers lose their division lead, they would either right now be the fifth or sixth seed in the National League. I find it hard to see the writers to give an MVP award to a guy who's on a six-seeded team compared to someone like Schwarber, because the Phillies are looking realistically at that 3 seed or 2 seed, depending on what happens with out in the National League West. So I really think team play will also have a factor. It shouldn't, but I feel like it also will have a factor in the MVP voting when it comes to the end of the season in September.
I agree with that too. But who knows? You never know what really goes on in the mind of the writers, and I don't think we ever will. But it's for sure. Playoff seeding maybe it has an interest on it. Again, as I said, you don't know what's through the mind of the writers. A different topic though I might want to talk about is these playoff seedings and this division. A conversation I'm having with people this week about is when Phillies obviously incredible home field advantage. I've been making the case this year how like I don't really give a damn about the division. Like I would not mind if the Mets won it at all. And I'm not saying because I want to avoid the bye week. No, I don't believe the bye week is a real benefit, nor is it a real, I would say, disadvantage for a team. It depends on really how you handle it. But at the end of the day, you still got to come out and play your best baseball. I can't say that's a reason for these 1s and 2 seeds that have completely fallen out in the past. But I want to say, in the formatting itself, as a lower seed, I kind of liked it in the past when the Phillies had the middle games of a series right there in the at home, because either way you're gonna want to win a game on the road no matter what. And so I figure you might as well knock that out early, then put the pressure on your opponent. Hey, now come win in our Loud House. Screw a game 5 or a winner take all game 7 at home. I think when you get to that point, home field advantage isn't the difference. So I sometimes I wonder, hey, if the Phillies 3 seed, I will not mind if they are the lower seed, and even into the World Series, let's say, even though it looks like the Phillies are going to have a better league than every team in the American League is going to have a better record, which would give them the advantage, which gives the more home games in the World Series.
Well, it'll be interesting who comes out of the American League because there's obviously, the top seeds in the American League right now do have a better record than the Phillies, besides the Astros. So the Blue Jays and Tigers do. But again, you look at the American League, and I think the best team right now is the Boston Red Sox. So in a case like that, you would have home field advantage. When it comes to the National League, right now the Phillies would sit as the 3 seed. They are 2.5 games, though, out of the 6 seed. So that shows how much it could change. This is the Phillies' biggest division lead since Memorial Day weekend. So in between all of those things is I don't know how it affects the player psychologically in between going on the road and being at home. I think the best case scenario for the Phillies would be to get that 3 seed, play a wild card series in Philly, and then go on the road and face what would realistically be either the most likely the National League West Division champions or the Milwaukee Brewers or Chicago Cubs. I think that's a much better situation for the Phillies than getting the 2 seed, having to wait and wait, and the 6 seed in the National League. In the 3 years the National League has had it, every year the 6 seed has gone to the NLCS. In the first 2 years, the team has gone to the World Series. That's where the Phillies were at last year, and they ended up losing to the Mets. Does that stuff carry over? I don't believe that, but I know if you said this before, it's not the best team, it's the right team in the postseason. Last year, the Detroit Tigers were 1 win away from going to the American League Championship Series after having a 0.1% chance to make the playoffs in August, and they selling at the deadline. So really, the Phillies just have to get hot at the right time. When they've gone on their runs, they've had their best. They've played bad baseball in September. They've turned it on when it matters in October. Last year it was kind of the opposite. They had a decent September, and then they just fell flat in October. The wheels fell off. So if the Phillies they could get through their rough baseball here, they could get better towards October. I think that'll be better for them in the long run.
Absolutely. And you look at right now, the Mets are that 6th seed. So yeah, do you want to see them in that division series again, having the home field? Again, who knows if history repeats themselves. One thing that I think people get mixed up with this 6th seed is it's underdog energy. And teams can do that, but they can't do it for multiple years. That's why you never see these Cinderella stories go back to back. And and here's the thing: if the Mets are the 6th seed, they're not underdogs. Everybody knows what the Mets are. Everybody saw the Mets. All of the world of Major League Baseball saw the Mets in that NLCS, and they saw them sign Mr. $800 million Juan Soto. And it's the same case for the Phillies. They don't have underdog energy to play in for. Everybody knows what the Phillies are. They know they went to the World Series a few years ago and have been in the playoffs the past few years, and they have big guys like Bryce Harper. So, but this is where I think a team like the Brewers, even though, all right, yeah, 1 seed in the league, that's still just a pack of hungry dogs right now, like just making their run, playing their best baseball. Now, of course, it's August. You don't win the World Series in August. I got to see them play this well to believe it later in the season. And of course, the Dodgers last year, that wasn't an underdog team. That was just them finally, more of their bottom of the lineup hitters. Like, hey, no, we're going to get our job done right now, and that's what they did. And they got hot at the right time. And the Yankees also did not do themselves many favors in that series.
And remember, the NLCS MVP last year was Tommy Edman. Wasn't Otani, wasn't Betts, wasn't Freeman. It was Tommy Edman who was hitting in the bottom, 3 of the Dodgers order. But the team that probably scares me the most in the National League right now is the Cincinnati Reds. They've been playing really good baseball recently. They have that feeling of these underdog teams that we've seen in the National League, like the Arizona Diamondbacks in 23, like the 2022 Philadelphia Phillies. They just, to me, they have that feeling, and I think they have the roster to do it. That's why, again, I don't really want to see that 2 seed or, especially the 2 seed, because a team like Cincinnati would realistically be the 6 seed. Are the Phillies a better team on paper than the Cincinnati Reds? Yes, but they had a little trouble with the Reds when they came to Citizens Bank Park. They play the Reds this upcoming week for a 3-game series in Cincinnati, so we'll be interested to see how the Phillies match up, considering Cincinnati has two of their best pitchers on the mound in Andrew Abbott and Hunter Green in that matchup, in that series. So I think it'll be good if the Phillies could try to avoid Cincinnati, because I think the Phillies are probably the best team in the National League up and down. I don't really see there being a better team in the National League at this moment. But again, it's not about the best team. It's about who gets hot at the right moment. And the Phillies just have to hit that if they want to go back to the World Series.
For sure, for sure. And now you said this one thing. Yeah, they do play the Reds this upcoming week. You might end up seeing the Reds in the playoffs. Let me take you back to last year, a little few weeks before the playoffs. The Phillies played a 4-game series in Queens, and they lost 3 out of 4. Was it 3 out of 4 if you remember correctly? I
Yeah,
don't
no,
believe it was a
three
4-game
three out
series.
of four. They had a chance to win the division, and they failed the last 2 games. And then they also were in Milwaukee earlier that week, lost 2 out of 3 in Milwaukee as well.
Yeah, so they choked it there. But that's the thing. They saw the Mets, a potential playoff team. That was a hot Mets team. In those 4 games that Ruben Amaro Jr. made this point on the postgame show after that Game 4 loss. The Mets in that series figured out how to beat the Phillies. Rob Thompson stood there, didn't think to make any adjustments, be a vocal leader to his players. No, the Mets had them figured out. And here's just one thing: if the Phillies don't go play their best baseball this in Cincinnati this week, I would dearly hope that Rob Thompson finds some takeaways from this. Hey, when we face Cincinnati later, but if we do see them again, these are things we got to fix and what we cannot do against them. Because who knows? They might be the underdogs, have nothing to lose. They'll start a rookie Chase Burns there. They'll start their best pitchers like Lodolo and Andrew Abbott. And I would hate to see that be another failure of a series just because our management couldn't figure out how they got solved against against the team they played earlier. Now, obviously, that Mets series was really 2 weeks before. This is 2 months before they would potentially see them in the playoffs again. So obviously, there's a time difference, but it's baseball, and sometimes time isn't the essence.
But I
So
feel like also the hard thing in this case is because, you look at the Phillies, they're not what they're going to look like in October right now. I would be surprised if they're still platooning when we get to October. Their third baseman is going to look different in October, realistically, because I would be very surprised if it's not Alec Boehm. The pitching rotation will look different in October because they're not going to see Sanchez and they're not going to see Zack Wheeler, the two pitchers who they would see in a best of 3 or best of 5. But they do have to see, and I think they will win this series against the Reds, but they have, because they already did beat the Reds in the series this season, but they do have to learn from their mistakes and be able to rebound because they are one of those pesky teams that you don't want to run into, like those Diamondbacks, like the Mets last year, who always have our number. And that's going to be the thing that we look at in September because the Phillies do have a stretch where they play playoff caliber teams. They have this stretch from the beginning of September. It's the Brewers, who have the best record in baseball, the Marlins, who have been really hot, the Mets for 4 in Citizens Bank Park, the Royals come to town, then they go on the road for the Dodgers. So that stretch right there is going to really show what this Phillies team is made of and what they're going to do when we get down the stretch this season, if they're going to be ready to go for the playoffs or they're going to go in slow like they did last year, and then it will be an early exit, which won't be the best for anybody.
now I'm not sure if September really decide that because obviously I do believe you don't get beat. You don't want to get beat twice. So all right, if they lost that series, that 3-game series in Los Angeles to the Dodgers, I wouldn't press the panic button there. As I'm like, all right, no, but figure it out. But as I just said, is Rob Thompson going to learn from his mistakes? So I think that's the ultimatum right there. The Marlins, that team it's kind of annoying. It kind of woke me up the other day, like, whoa, what the hell? This team's 500, and I mean, hey, shout out to Miami. They figured out how to be again another pack of hungry dogs. That with Kyle Stowers, just hey, no, we got nothing to lose. Let's bring some fans out to Miami. as an opposing rival in the NL East, I hate it. But if I was a team of anybody else outside of the division, I'd absolutely love it for Marlins fans. Now, you also brought up the point about platooning, and you don't think the Phillies will stop doing that. I have become a more and more opponent of platooning this year. I don't believe it helps our hitters or the guys that we put out there. I think for certain players, it really doesn't help. As kind of Max Kepler said earlier this year, his challenge has been not playing consistently. It's hard to get in the groove at the plate when you're on the bench twice a week. I may have made this point earlier season on a different episode where I think with a guy, I don't think you're doing a guy like Harrison Bader many favors. Like, whoa, what am I starting 3 times a week so far? I hope that from now on, I do not want to see him on the bench. Like, I want to see him playing at least 5 times a week now, potentially. But if he, so I really hope that, and again, we're past this Rob's quote unquote 6 days after the deadline planning platooning. I really have no idea I think Kepler, there's a chance he stays. There could be a chance that he isn't here tomorrow, but overall he might. Again, the Phillies, I think what they're ultimately looking at, that's the other thing I brought up in recent conversation, is they see his batted ball percentage and how he's making a lot of hard contact. He's just been one of the more statistically unlucky hitters this year in baseball. Again, I'm wondering if that could be something more compact with his swing. Like, does he get too much under the ball? Essentially, like, we're seeing him hit these 350-foot flyouts all the way to the track. And is he also getting too far under the ball with hitting line drives? And so I think maybe ultimately something. This may be something I have to judge Kevin Long for. You're working on the way to soften his swing a bit. Now, obviously, that could have its consequences there. It's $1 million question. I think that it's an answer we'll probably never know. And obviously, the way Max Kepler's gone about recently, I mean, he had some success this past week in the series. Good for him. But overall, it just really depends. How do they feel about him? And I think it's honestly insane. You've seen 4 months of this straight unlucky stuff. It's kind of stuff he's suffered with his career in Minnesota. It's $1 million question how to figure him out.
I think it wouldn't hurt the Phillies even if he's not going to play every day, to keep Max Kepler, because I think he's a guy who could be a weapon off the bench in the postseason. Talk about how he's been unlucky, unlucky and luck. It happens in the most random of times when you get lucky, and all you need is to get lucky once in the postseason, and you could be looking at a really deep run. I think it helps the Phillies more keeping him on the team than it hurts them. Because I'd rather have a guy like him who's actually played in the postseason before and has produced in the postseason before, compared to a guy, rookie, or a guy like Johan Rojas, who, love Johan, but he's not the bat off the bench. But I think he is going to have a roster spot in the postseason. But I think it would be in the Phillies' best interest to keep Max Kepler around over these next couple of weeks into the postseason.
Potentially, and I wonder if they use him as a bench bet. Maybe that could help him out a little more, as a more help his mind out, and maybe he can get himself in the right state of mind there. And hopefully somebody can maybe tell him, like, hey, you're a bench guy now. We did say we apologize for saying that you were going to be a starter earlier in the year. This is where the cards have fallen. I hope that's something he can just sit back and accept that and get used to it. Johan Rojas, I believe, is another victim of platooning. I don't think honestly, if he was an everyday starter on a different team, he'd be a serviceable guy that you could look at like, hey, damn, that's not a bad ball player. He would be a somewhat consistent hitter. Again, they do so much to try to figure out his swing. I just don't think he gets the at bats to help him out. But I think, and the other thing though I judge with Kepler off the bench is the reason why Cody Clemens isn't here is that we don't really use a lefty pinch hitter that much. Now, obviously, Rob will do it when a left-handed starter is taken out of the game, but obviously that means. So, would you rather is Max Kepler the first guy you're bringing up, or is it Bryson Stott or Brandon Marsh off the bench? Because obviously, if there's a left-handed starter, that's who those are the guys you likely had on the bench to begin with. So that's where I ultimately don't know where it falls. I think that's, again, why the reason Cody Clemens isn't here. There was no use for having a left-handed pinch hitter because you already had. That was the way you're already platooning guys. Or maybe they quit platooning entirely, and Max Kepler's just kept here as maybe some experience too. Who knows? Again, I don't know how much the guys in the clubhouse like him. I assume they have to if he's been here this long and still has had these struggles. But again, I think that's another it's another $1 million question. How does he work on the bench, and how could Rob Thompson figure it out with him?
Because I think, and I think we're on agreement on this. The everyday starting outfield is having Marsh in left field and Bader in center field with Cassie and right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I believe Bader is another. Yeah, as I said earlier, should be an everyday starter. I don't think you're doing him any favors. Sitting him on the bench almost. I hope it's not 3 times a week anymore. I don't want it to be more than once a week.
And it'll be interesting to see as we start to wrap up here. But this weekend series against the Texas Rangers, the Phillies will face Merrill Kelly on Friday, familiar foe in Jacob DeGrom on Saturday, and then Patrick Corbin on Sunday. That's the Rangers' plans for now. So if Thompson keeps with this platooning, we would see a Max Kepler in game 1 and 2, and then Harrison Bader would definitely get to start in game 3. I will be interested to see, and I think we all will be watching, when the lineup drops for the first game, who's in the lineup, who isn't in the lineup. I think that'll tell us a lot about how they want to platoon and how they're going to move forward with this, with the outfield situation.
Definitely. Patrick Corbin, that's something to watch for on Sunday. You see how much the Phillies have struggled recently against good left-handed pitching. They don't have the good record against starting lefties this year, and I'm not sure how much to blame that is against. We're using a different lineup, because you look at some of those games, it wasn't always the offense's fault. But I think that might could that be another game where Phillies are trying to come back or trying to let's complete a sweep, and they come up flat, and like they did based on Wednesday against or not, was it Wednesday? Yes, against the Orioles. That final game, that was just a bummer, real sleeper. So, and obviously I think the pitching I hope they find a way to game plan for DeGrom like they didn't against Screwball. Obviously not a difference between righty and lefty, it's the team's strengths. And against Merrill Kelly, the Phillies are fortunate they're avoiding Nate Eovaldi this series. That is one of my favorite pitchers in the league to not be on the Phillies. Kind of wish he was, even though we don't need any starters here. But man, that guy is a horse. Can come out, get the start when you need it. The Reds, yeah, obviously as you said, Abbott again. Let's see how they do against an elite a starting pitcher, a lefty starting pitcher who's on his A game. And obviously against that national series, no excuse not to take 3 out of 4 there.
Yeah, but you already know the Phillies are going to drop a game because they always do to their divisional opponents.
It
This
happens.
weekend, the Phillies have Cristopher Sanchez tonight. Jesus Luzardo is going on Saturday, and Zack Wheeler is scheduled to go on Sunday for the Phillies, which will line up either Taijuan Walker or Aaron Nola on Monday against Cincinnati, and then Tuesday would be Rangers Suarez.
Indeed so.
So be interesting to see what the Phillies decide to do and how they fare with one of their toughest stretches of baseball in recent time. Texas is a close wildcard team, same with the Cincinnati Reds. We will be back very soon. We'll break down at least the Texas and Cincinnati series, if not also the Washington series. Thank you guys for listening to episode number 4 of the State of the Phightins podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, guys.